My father disowned me for marrying a poor man. 20 years later, he begged for a job at my company. My father looked me in the eye at my own wedding reception, set down his champagne glass, and said, "You are dead to me." Then he walked out and never came back. 20 years later, he sat across from me in a glass office on the 40th floor, filling out a job application, not knowing the woman signing his paycheck was the daughter he threw away. If you enjoy stories like this, stories about being underestimated and coming back stronger, hit subscribe, because this one gets good. My name is Elena, and I grew up in a house where love came with a price tag. My father, Richard, built a mid-sized logistics company from nothing, and he wore that success like armor. He measured people by their bank accounts, their titles, their zip codes. My mother had passed when I was 12, so it was just the two of us, and I spent my whole childhood trying to earn a version of love that was always just out of reach. Then I met Daniel. Daniel was a carpenter. He built furniture with his hands, drove a 15-year-old pickup truck, and rented a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. He was also the kindest, steadiest man I had ever known. My best friend Priya adored him instantly. "He looks at you like you're the only person in the room," she told me over coffee 3 weeks after we met. "Marry that!" My father had other plans. He'd been introducing me to the sons of business partners for years, men with trust funds and empty conversation. When I brought Daniel home for dinner, my father barely looked up from his plate. "What does your father do?" he asked. Daniel said his father had been a mechanic. My father's jaw tightened, and he changed the subject. Later that night, he told me plainly, "That boy will never be able to give you the life you deserve." I told him love wasn't a line item on a balance sheet. He didn't laugh. He didn't even look angry. He just looked disappointed, the way you look at a bad investment. The honeymoon phase of my relationship with Daniel was the happiest year of my life. We got married in a small backyard ceremony. 40 guests, string lights, a homemade cake Priya had baked at 2 a.m. My father came. I remember thinking that meant something. It didn't. Halfway through the toasts, he stood up, said the words that would define the next 2 decades of my life, and left before the cake was cut. I didn't cry that night. I told myself I didn't need him, but some small part of me kept waiting for the phone to ring. It never did. The first 5 years were hard in ways money can't measure, and hard in ways it absolutely can. Daniel and I lived paycheck to paycheck. I worked as an office assistant during the day and took night classes in business administration, determined to build something that was entirely mine, something my father couldn't take credit for or take away. Daniel supported every late night, every ramen dinner, every moment I doubted myself. "You're going to build something incredible," he told me once, sanding down a chair in our tiny garage. "I don't need proof. I already know it." Priya became more than a friend during those years. She became family. When I lost my job in a round of layoffs, she was the one who sat with me on the floor of my apartment while I cried, and then, 3 days later, handed me a folder. "I've been saving this," she said. It was a business plan for a small logistics consulting firm, the exact industry my father had built his empire in, except this time, built on transparency, fair pricing, and actually treating clients like people. "You know this industry better than anyone alive," she said. "You grew up in it. Use what he taught you. Don't let him win by making you afraid of it." I started that company in a spare bedroom with $11,000 in savings and a laptop with a cracked screen. Daniel built my first desk. Priya did my books for free for the first 2 years. We called it Harlow Logistics, my mother's maiden name. The first 3 years were brutal. I underbid contracts just to get clients in the door. I drove 4 hours to personally deliver a proposal because I couldn't afford to lose the account. There were nights I sat at that cracked screen laptop until 3 a.m., wondering if I'd made a catastrophic mistake proving my father right. But slowly, client by client, the company grew. By year 7, we had 18 employees. By year 12, we had our own building. By year 18, Harlow Logistics was handling regional distribution contracts worth over $60 million a year. And I had a corner office on the 40th floor of a building with my company's name etched into the lobby glass. I heard over the years, secondhand and in fragments, what happened to my father. His company had struggled after a failed expansion into overseas shipping around year 9. Bad timing, worse advice, and a business partner who'd embezzled nearly $2 million before disappearing. By year 15, the company was gone. By year 18, so was the house, the cars, the country club membership. I heard he'd been living in a small rented condo 2 towns over. I never reached out. He never did either. Then came the ticking clock. 3 months ago, our HR director, Marcus, came into my office holding a folder. "We've got an interesting applicant for the operations consultant role," he said. "Older guy, 30 years in logistics management, sharp resume, wants to come in for an interview this Thursday." He slid the folder across my desk. I opened it and felt the floor tilt beneath me. Richard Harlow. No. Richard Whitmore, my father, using his own last name, the one I'd dropped when I married Daniel and never looked back. His photo was older, grayer, thinner in the face. His resume listed his old company at the top, followed by 3 years of gaps, followed by a warehouse supervisor job, followed by another gap. At the bottom, in his own handwriting on the application, in the box marked, "Why do you want to work here?" he had written, "I respect what this company has built. I believe I still have valuable experience to offer, even if my recent years have not gone as planned." He had no idea. My legal name on the incorporation documents was still Elena Whitmore Cole. Cole from Daniel's side, buried under my public-facing title as E. Whitmore, CEO. He'd applied for a mid-level consultant job at his own daughter's company without recognizing it, because in his mind, I was still the poor girl who married a carpenter and disappeared into obscurity. He had never once looked me up. The turning point wasn't fury. It was something quieter and heavier. I told Marcus I wanted to sit in on the interview myself, unusual for a role 3 levels below me, but not unheard of for a high-priority hire, which is what I called it. Priya, now my COO, found out an hour later. She sat across from my desk, arms crossed. "You don't owe him anything," she said. "Not an interview, not an explanation, not a single second of your time." Daniel, when I called him that night, said less, as he always did, and it meant more. "Whatever you decide," he said, "I'll be there." Thursday came. I sat at the head of the conference table when my father walked in, wearing a suit that was a size too big, clearly bought for a body he used to have. He sat down, straightened his tie, and looked up. And I watched 20 years drain out of his face in real time. "Elena," he said. His voice cracked on the second syllable. "Mr. Whitmore," I said. the way I'd learned to speak in 100 boardrooms since the last time he'd seen me. "Let's talk about your application." He tried, at first, to talk around it. Congratulations on the company, questions about how I'd built it, attempts to reach for a version of pride that didn't belong to him. I let him finish. Then I opened the folder and read his own words back to him. That he still had valuable experience to offer, even though his recent years hadn't gone as planned. "You once told me," I said, "that Daniel would never give me the life I deserved. That love wasn't enough. That the world only respects people who've already won." I closed the folder. "You were wrong about all of it. And now you're asking the poor man's wife for a job." He didn't defend himself. He didn't have anything left to defend. He just sat there, and for the first time in my entire life, I watched my father look small. I didn't hire him for the consultant role, but I didn't throw him out either. I offered him something he never offered me: a real conversation, on my terms, after the meeting ended and the folder was closed. We talked for 2 hours. He apologized, really apologized, not the performance he used to give when he wanted something. I told him it would take more than one conversation to undo 2 decades. He nodded and said he understood, and for once, I believed he meant it. Today, my father works 3 days a week in a junior logistics role at a company I own. Not because I forgave everything, but because I decided that closure didn't require his suffering. It just required the truth to finally sit in the room with both of us. Daniel still builds furniture, including the desk I still work at every single day. Priya still runs half of everything with me, exactly like she promised she would, in a spare bedroom with a cracked laptop screen. My father spent his whole life measuring people by what they had. It took losing everything for him to understand what I'd known since I was 23 years old, standing at my own wedding, watching him walk away. Real worth was never something he could see coming. If this story hit home for you, make sure you're subscribed, because next week, I'm telling you about a woman who discovered her mother-in-law had been stealing from her for 11 years, hidden in plain sight inside her own home. You will not want to miss it.